Hello and welcome back to our channel. One important habit which we need to develop in order to be successful in life is the habit of reading. We all must have heard of the saying, great leaders are great readers. If you look at some of the successful people or even some of the successful people which you know in your life, you would find that most of them are great readers. The kind of books you should read and the kind of books which you like, or whether you like a particular book or not, will depend a lot on your background, your interests, but most importantly, your circumstances. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you 10 books which has greatly influenced me or which have completely changed my life. The first book in our list is Awaken Design Within by Anthony Robbins. I'm sure most of us would be familiar with Anthony Robbins and the kind of work he does. I've chosen this as the first book because this is a book about motivation and a book for people who are not satisfied or not happy with their status quo, whether it's their financial status or their career status or even their physical status, and would like to change their life for the better. All of us have the potential to be successful and to achieve whatever goals we have set for ourselves. The first step is to make a decision to bring a change and take control of our life and our destiny. Because Anthony Robbins talks about how from a fat and broke person, he became a successful person and he achieved the successes that he has achieved within a span of 7-8 years by taking a decision one day that he's sick and tired of his status quo and he wants to make a change in his life. The book talks about how a decision to bring a change is much more important in shaping our destiny than our conditions or even the circumstances that we are in, and how our belief or our understanding of the various circumstances or events are more important in shaping our life or our destiny rather than those events themselves. Anthony Robbins also talks about how you can utilize pain and pleasure and link them to action and inaction to make sure that we take those actions which are required for our success, although they might not be very pleasant initially. So if you are someone who is not happy with your current status quo and want to change your life for the better and want to know how to do that and how to awaken that giant within, this is the first book I think you should pick up. The only minor complaint about this book or the paperback version is that the font is very small and I had to actually take regular breaks to complete this book. So if you are also wearing specs and have difficulty reading small fonts, you might need to take regular breaks to complete the whole book because it's a big book. The second and a very popular book, which I'm sure some of us would have read, or at least many of us would have already heard about it, is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. In this book, Napoleon Hill talks about the 13 steps or the 13 key elements for achieving riches or success in life. So he talks about desire, which he calls it the first step or the first ingredient to any achievement or success. Napoleon Hill also talks about an important ingredient or step for success, which is how to control our subconscious mind. Because he believes that how we control and what we feed to our subconscious mind determines our success. Which is why the book also is interestingly entitled Think and Grow Rich, not even Work Hard and Get Rich. So you should definitely check this book out if you want to read in detail and understand what are those 13 steps or 13 ingredients for achievement or success. The third book in our list is Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I'm sure most of us will be already familiar with this book because it's a very popular book, and I also have recommended this book in one of our earlier videos. If there's one book which should be prescribed as a must-read in school, then this is the book. In this book, Robert Kiyosaki describes and compares what he learned about money and finance from two of his dads. One who is his real father and a professor and whom he calls as the poor dad, and the other who is his friend's father who is a businessman and whom he calls as the rich dad. The book is a very good introduction to finance and money for people even with non-finance background. The book also clarifies important concepts about finance, like the difference between assets and liabilities, how to understand the financial statements, and how to see the cash flow patterns of the poor, the middle class, or the rich, and why the rich get richer. Some of these concepts we have also covered in our earlier videos. This is a small book and a very interesting read, and I'm sure once you start, you won't be able to put it down. So if you haven't read this book and looking for a starting book in finance, this is a book you should pick up. The fourth book in our list is The Richest Man in Babylon. This is an all-time classic on personal finance management, and the book talks about some of the key timeless principles of money as well as personal finance management. We all know that Babylon was a rich city in spite of the limited resources which they have on their land. So the backdrop of this book is that the king of Babylon wanted his citizens to be rich and successful. So in order to do that, he finds out who was the richest person or who was the richest man in the city. And he asked that man to teach a few selected individuals how he has become rich and how they can also become rich and successful. So you will find in this book all these timeless principles being explained by the richest man in Babylon to these selected individuals. Some of which are pay thyself first, manage thy expenditures, and lastly and importantly, how to invest your goal. So if you're looking for a book on personal finance management, this is the book you should pick up. The next book in our list is How to Win Friends and Influence People. This is one of the best-selling books of all time with over 20 million copies sold. And by looking at the title, you'll understand why. Because this is a book about relationships. The concepts discussed in this book will come in handy whether it's about managing relationship at work or with your friends or even in your family. Because these concepts will help you in making people like you, building various relationships, inspiring or even leading a team. Broadly, the book talks about the fundamental techniques in handling people, 6 ways to make people like you, how to win people to your way of thinking, how to change people without giving offense or arousing resentment. So given that one of the key skills for happiness and success is the ability to build good relationships, this is an important book to read. The 6th book in our list is The Power of Habit. You must have heard of the saying, we first make our habits, then our habits make us. The book talks about what it calls as the habit loop, which is critical for understanding how habits work, and that understanding will help us to inculcate new and good habits, while at the same time enable us to get rid of the bad habits. The book not only talks about the habits of individuals, but it also talks about the successful habits of organizations as well as societies. The book also gives lots of examples of how this understanding of habits are used for personal transformation as well as transforming or changing the habits of various businesses as well as big companies. So if you want to get a deeper understanding of how habits work, and if you want to leverage that understanding for personal growth as well as managing your company or businesses, this is a good read. The 7th book in our list is about negotiation, and it's Getting to Yes by Rosa Fisher and William Ury. When we think of negotiation, what first comes to mind are business meetings or business negotiations. But actually in real life, we do engage in many other forms of negotiations, whether it's with our friends or with our family, our children, or even with our parents. So this book provides an interesting framework in order to have a win-win negotiation. When it comes to negotiation meetings, the typical approach which we all tend to adopt is taking up a position and start negotiating or give concessions from that position to hopefully arrive at a mutually agreeable term. But the book starts off by advising us against adopting such typical negotiation techniques, because more often than not, such typical techniques often lead to unsuccessful negotiations. Because particularly in long drawn out negotiations, ego and various other things comes into play, and these position based negotiations typically lead to loss of goodwill and breakdown of many relationships. The book provides a negotiation framework which comprises of 4 key elements, like separating the people from the problem, focusing on interests, not positions, and most importantly, insisting on using objective criteria. Although these principles or elements are basic and may sound common sense, but they typically tend to be overlooked or missed in many critical negotiation meetings. So if you're looking for a book which can help you better manage negotiation meetings, particularly business meetings, and also achieve better negotiation results, this is a book you should pick up. The next book in our list is Influence by Robert Cialdini. This is an interesting book on the psychology of influence and persuasion, and would be a very good and interesting read if you have a background or an interest in marketing and sales. Typically, it's very hard to convince or influence somebody. The book discusses 6 universal principles which can be used to influence or persuade others, and also maybe change the way they behave and react, like reciprocation, commitment and consistency, social proof, liking, authority, and scarcity. The book discusses numerous examples of how these 6 universal principles have been used by individuals as well as businesses to influence others or their customers. For example, the book provides an interesting example of how a particular salesman has utilized the principle of scarcity to become the top second-hand car dealer in the country. So this is an interesting book to understand understand how we can influence and persuade others. At the same time, this book will also be helpful in trying to protect or defend ourselves against people who try and take advantage of us using these very same principles. The next book in our list is about building a personal brand, and it's Crushing It by Gary Vaynerchuk. For those of you who are familiar with Gary and his work and probably following his YouTube channel, you would know that this is his follow-on book to his earlier book, Crush It. As I had mentioned earlier, the kind of books or whether you like a particular book or not depends hugely on your circumstances. And this book has probably made it to my list because I was reading this particular book when I was just starting out this channel. This book and Gary's work in general is all about creating and building a personal brand and then leveraging that personal brand to achieve entrepreneurial success. One interesting point which Gary makes is that we are all building a personal brand, whether consciously or unconsciously. So the idea is, if you are anyway building a personal brand, why not do it consciously and effectively? So Gary talks about how it's increasingly easier to build a personal brand with the advancement in technology and social media. And in fact, in this book itself, he discusses how we can leverage and use each of these existing or trending social media platforms to build our personal brand and how we can leverage them for our businesses as well as entrepreneurial endeavors. In the book, Gary also discusses the 7 key factors or elements which are required to successfully build a personal brand, particularly in any of these social media platforms. One important takeaway which Gary mentions in the book is that you don't need to wait until you're big or until you're hugely successful to start coming online on these various platforms and start sharing your knowledge or build your personal brand. He prescribes capturing your journey from the start and how in fact your YouTube channel or your story or your social media story should all be about the journey and not the destination itself. So if you need that push to maybe start that YouTube channel or start that venture or that side hustle which you have been thinking and planning for a long time, then this book might just provide you that. The last and one of the most interesting books I have come across is The Go-Giver. This book is slightly different and is a refreshing read because unlike many of the other success books which are based on the philosophy of being a go-getter, this book suggests that in order to be successful or in order to achieve what it calls as stratospheric success, we need to be a go-giver instead of being a go-getter. This book is about the story of a young and promising salesperson named Joe, a go-getter within his organization. But in spite of all his efforts, Joe has not been able to achieve the kind of success he has set for himself. And out of desperation, one day he started seeking the help of this legendary consultant whom everybody refers to as the chairman. So in what follows, the chairman teaches Joe the 5 go-giver laws of stratospheric success, which finally enable Joe to achieve that level or that next level of success which he has been dreaming of. I'm sure some of you will have the same question which I had when I picked up this book, which is how can you become successful or how can you become rich by giving? So if you want to understand that and understand these 5 go-giver laws of how you can also become truly successful by being a go-giver, you should pick up this book. If you're still watching this video, I'm sure you also must be sharing the same passion for reading books. So I'd like to mention 3 things before I sign off. First, of course, is a big thank you. Second, I have put links to these 10 books in the description. So in case you're interested in any of these books, you can actually check them out by clicking on those links. And since I'm also on the constant lookout for new interesting books to read, I would request you to leave in the comments any interesting book which you think I and anybody who is watching this video should check out, or any book which you feel should have made it to this top 10 list. And if I haven't read any of those suggested books, I will definitely make sure to go check them out. Hope you find this video helpful. If you do, and if you like our new video format, please do give a thumbs up or like. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please consider doing so. And please do remember to hit the notification icon. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day.